welcome to the Deal Finder Corner. So this is your weekly property talk show brought to you by Property Filter, hosted by myself, Guillaume Black. You know right now, your favorite Frenchman, CEO and co-founder at Property Filter. It's the UK's highest rated platform to find deals, and we're on a mission to empower property investors and deal sourcers members to find 1,000 deals this year, thanks to the Property Filter blueprint. And the purpose with these Deal Finder Corners is to give you more and the best of the available resources, invite expert guests who will share with you the latest and the most current strategies, tactics, and secrets about what actually works right now in terms of finding deals, making deals, and the reality of systemizing and running a high-performance business in property. So it's my immense pleasure to introduce to you my very good friend on today's Deal Finder Corner, Josh Keegan. So Josh and I go back a few years now, a very good friend of mine, a father of two, lovely Iris and Harvey, and I got some good entrepreneur parenting advice recently, to be fair, before and since Elia was born some 7 months ago. You might not know this, but we trained and ran our first marathon together a couple of years ago, and we were not holding hands, when we crossed the finish line, but it's just about. And things are a bit special when you overcome challenges together, like this, I guess. And professionally, so Josh hosts the Property Entrepreneur Board program, which is the top tier program, if you're not familiar with it, with Dan Hill. He's a chartered accountant and award-winning entrepreneur, having started, scaled, and sold multiple successful property businesses. Josh walks the talks and effectively combines the disciplined world of finance with the fast-paced world of entrepreneurship. He will be covering everything from basic bookkeeping to advanced financial automation for property deals, whether you're just starting out or already managing properties. This session is tailored to elevate your financial strategy in property investment. And to be fair, Josh helped us set up the metrics and our financial systems in our businesses. And there was a true before and after in the way we run Property Filter and the wider portfolio as well. So I can highly recommend. So what you can expect from today's episode. So Josh will talk about how you can identify profitable business opportunities. We'll go over essential financial roles for business success, key financial reports for business management, and we'll have some time for an exclusive Q&A. So I'm very much looking forward to hearing about Josh talks today and listening to the advice and insight we have. So please give a massive Property Filter virtual welcome to Mr. Josh Keegan. Woo.
What we're going to be talking about today is how to do deals that make you money forever. And this is a real key point because I've just seen, obviously, behind the scenes of Property Filter, it's very easy to kind of get this romantic view of what these deals are going to look like. But we want to make sure that you're going to own these deals for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and they're going to be providing for you every month, every year without fail, as opposed to being on that decline. Like, we get this brand new refurbished property and it starts decline. We don't want that. We want to make sure the profitability stays at the right place forever. We want to own the deals for a lifetime. Small bit about me. I am the guy that basically has shocking internet issues and a few other bits. So I'm a chartered accountant, a few years ago. I've won Property Entrepreneur of the Year board level on Property Entrepreneur multiple times. And I'm the founder and deliverer of the Ultimate FD podcast. So we have a podcast called the Ultimate FD podcast, growing rapidly. And that's what I do. I spend a lot of time on stage. I'm a public speaker, professional speaker. I spend a lot of time every month working with literally hundreds of entrepreneurs. And basically, because of my background, we spend a lot of time talking about finance, about business modeling, and I see behind the scenes in so many different businesses. I've got access to literally hundreds of Xero accounts, and I see how everyone's financials work, whether you're a property investor, a property sourcer, you're doing your first deal, or your 100th deal. There's some common themes that we see. My primary focus is Ultimate FD. So this is basically a business where Guillaume said it in his introduction, we combine two worlds, which is entrepreneurship and finance. And the aim of the game for us is to make finance accessible to entrepreneurs and to actually make it so it can be used by you guys to actually run a successful property portfolio, property business, with the aim of the game as discussed to make sure the deals that you're going to do now are going to be profitable forever. Like, we want to make sure that you manage to do this. And some of the tools we're going to share with you in this session are going to be literally how you can actually do this in practice. So, key sentiment: most entrepreneurs spend their lives building businesses that don't make money. This is so true. If you look at any kind of stats, Companies House, if you look at any kind of UK-based stats for businesses in general, a lot of companies don't actually make any money. And obviously, we don't want to be in that boat. We want to make sure that our portfolio makes us money. It gets even more exasperated when you're in property for so many reasons. Number one, property is one of these businesses which is really hard to fail at, but it's really easy just to dwindle along and just about survive. So for example, like imagine if you were starving, then every few days someone gave you a little bit of food, and it was never enough to thrive, but it was just about enough to survive. This is what happened with property-based businesses. We build these portfolios. They may not be doing as well as we'd like, but then every month the next set of rent payments comes in and just about covers our costs. It just keeps us going, just about covers us costs. And it gets quite scary because then it's like, well, what happens if we didn't continue to rent the property? What happens if we decided to exit? Well, it'd be very, very challenging. It'd be very, very scary because the idea of selling these assets we've spent so long acquiring is very, very daunting. But at the same time, we're just about surviving. In addition to that, we're quite unique in that we have these large capital outflows, these deposits, these refurbs, these big chunks of cash that go out for quite a small return that comes back in. Or there might be a larger return if we're doing developments or we're doing big refinances, but it's quite volatile. And we've all probably been in that boat where a refinance has come in lower than expected. I was going to say, or higher than expected. It's quite rare. Normally they're lower than expected. And we're constantly juggling cash flow issues and performance issues in the business. I've seen behind the scenes in so many companies, and I think there's the people that do this right understand this is a business. They understand that a business needs financial clarity. They understand that they need to manage the performance of their assets. The people that do this wrong are the people that think, oh, I can just buy a property, passive income, set and forget, and it will just make me money forever. Those are the people that do this wrong. Romance versus reality. So this is a picture of my little girl in Cape Town. We went to South Africa last month for 3 weeks. And I had this really romantic view of what this 3-week holiday was going to be like. I've got two very young kids. I've got a 6-month-old Harvey, and then Iris is probably about 2.5 now. And I had this amazing idea that we're going to just chill. We're going to sleep in the afternoon. They were going to play all day. It's going to be the perfect temperature. And I was just going to come back feeling refreshed and relaxed. That was the romance. The reality, it was really hard work. We spent 3 weeks basically surviving. We got COVID throughout, and it was like there was no relaxing on the beach. It was exhausting. And taking 2 kids to a really distant country, I've learned my lesson, because any parent you say, it's quite hard to take kids away. They go, oh yeah, it's shocking. It's very, very difficult. Now, what's my point? Why am I telling you about my South African holiday? It's because I think that Property Filter and these apps that you guys are using to actually find these deals, they paint the picture and the romance, and these deals can be amazing. Like they can literally give you £1,000, £2,000 a month, but they might only do that at the start. And if you're not careful, a couple of years later, that £2,000 has gone down to 800 quid. Your utility bills rise, your rents have come down, you've got voids, you've got arrears, you've got tenants arguing, you've got evictions. And all of a sudden, these very beautiful deals can become, in reality, like poor performing liabilities as opposed to assets. We need to be really careful. We need to actually manage these. Before we talk about how we do that, just a bit of a insight from you guys. If you could just share in the chat box, just a bit about who's in the room. So just so I know, are you a sourcer? Are you a property investor? What do you guys actually do? It'd be really valuable. So I can just make sure I tailor all this information to everybody in the room. Boom, loads. Investor, developer, investor, sourcer, investor, property investor. Yeah, so many investors. That's cool. Package deals. iSurgeon and property investor. That's a good combo. Landlord, property sourcer. Nice, Dean. I'm a sourcer and the Ultimate FD podcast fan. You're at top of the list, Dean. Well done. Top of the class. Amazing. Awesome. Part-time FD. That's cool. Sorry, you can tell me how wrong I am by the end of this. In this, amazing. So this is brilliant. So we've got so many sources in here. We've got so many landladies. We've got all these different people. So this is all going to apply to you, and I'm going to make sure this is nicely tailored. So it's really going to help you on your journey. So thank you for sharing. So what we're going to talk about is what we call SOS. Anyone guess what SOS stands for? See anyone in the chat box? Big clue for the picture behind. We'll see. Save our souls. Yeah, good one, actually. Save our souls. It's incorrect, no. But actually, I can see why you go for that. Probably a bit of a leading question. What tends to happen is most of us understand that we're going to do some deals. And most of us get 1 or 2 or 3 properties under our belt. And then we go, oh, cool, we've got these 3 properties. But all of a sudden, maybe I'm not quite making as much money as I thought. And all of a sudden, I'm in a place where I actually aren't, my cash balance is going down as opposed to up. And all of a sudden, these properties that I thought were going to make me loads of money aren't. And we go, well, we need to get to the bottom of this. We need to get a bit of clarity on what's going on. So what we do is we try to get our accounts done and we try to get financial clarity, which is a really wise and really clever thing to do. The problem is there are a number of SOSs in the industry, which are called snake oil salesmen. So snake oil salesmen are basically things and people you're going to go approach to try and get your account sorted for you, to try and get the clarity, to keep your properties performing at the right level, but they're not going to help. Snake oil, for those of you who don't know, snake oil was this kind of concept. It was introduced in the 19th century by the Chinese workforce when they were building the transcontinental railway. And they basically had it because they're working these long shifts, these long hours, and they'd rub snake oil on their joints and on their muscles. And it soothed, they had omega-3 within that. So it had like omega-3 in the actual oil. But then over time, all these people started popping up and they said, oh, I've got snake oil that I can sell you. But it wasn't snake oil. It was beef fat mixed with petroleum, I believe. So it wasn't actually doing anything. So although they're rubbing it on their joints, it wasn't actually working. And unfortunately, when you go and start trying to understand the performance of your portfolio so you can make more profit forever, there's some snake oil salesmen that you are going to come up against within the industry. Who are they? So the first is your accountant. Most of us here will have an accountant, a tax accountant that helps us. But unfortunately, they're not always going to be able to help if you're not sure how to manage them. Second is your bank balance. So we're going to talk about why using your bank balance and logging into online banking won't actually help. And the third point is you. You, unfortunately, are one of the snake oil salesmen within this equation, which is actually stopping you from progressing forward. So we're going to talk about what that means and why that's the case in practice. The key is here, and the aim of the game is we want to do deals that not only make us money now, but make us money forever. And that's what we're going to be exploring. And this is what we're going to talk about now. How do we actually do that in practice? So we talk about snake oil salesman number one. So this is your accountant. This is your tax accountant. Most of you have probably got an accountant. It's one of the first people that they find. They might look like this chap. I don't know. But I'm not a big fan of tax accountants, so that's why I'm painting them in a bad picture. So we're going to start off. Why is your accountant a snake oil salesman? Why can they not help you get the financial clarity you need to make sure your properties make money forever? Why can they not tell you this? The first is they're overworked. So accountants tend to work on a model similar to a letting agents, actually, where they have a set number of overheads. They have like a level of overheads. And the way they make more money is they get on more and more and more clients. So all of a sudden, people go from offering great service to offering shocking service because they got all of these clients, all of these people, and they go from this great proactive service, this highly reactive, you're chasing them, they're not actually giving you any tax advice, they're just submitting your accounts, they're not giving you any insight into your information. It's because they're overworked. The second is they're highly reactive. Like, show of hands, who's got a tax accountant that they're chasing that doesn't seem to offer them any kind of good information, that they find like whenever they have to reach out for any tax strategy or advice? Who's had that experience? Yeah, a few of you. And like a lot of our clients come from those people. It's like they're highly reactive and they're very, very slow. One of the things we also find with tax accountants is they get paid more for more complicated structures. Like I speak to too many investors that come up to me and say, oh yeah, I've got 6 limited companies. They're all set up. I'm really tax efficient. I go, how many properties have you got? And they go, 1. So why have you got 6 limited companies then? Well, because it's just really tax efficient. And I've got it all set up, the group structure, and it's all, risk-free. And I'm going to go buy all these properties. And it's like, it's very complicated. And tax accountants tend to get paid for every additional limited company that you get set up. So of course they're going to advise you to have 6 companies because they get 6 lots of £100, £200 a month versus 1 lot. When in reality, it's not in your best interest. And finally, accountants, they don't speak entrepreneur. So they don't speak your language. They can't communicate with you guys as entrepreneurs because you want to know, how did my property do last month? How much is my maintenance spend? Why are my gas and electric costs up? Why are my voids up? What's going on in my portfolio? Whereas they want to just tell you about your tax. They want to tell you about accruals and prepayments and all of these things that you're not so interested in. So what you will need to do is, rather than just have a tax accountant, you need to move from a team of 1 to a team of 4. And what we all need is a team of world-class professionals to give us all the information we need on our portfolio. This is all about the right person, the right job, at the right price. Yeah, I've got a few messages in the actual chat box. Cool. So right person, the right job for the right price. So rather than pay an overpay tax accountant to do a poor job, we want the right person in the right place at the right price. One of the key sentences before I dive into this and tell you how to actually set your financial structure up so you can monitor and track and make sure each of your properties is performing at the right level for years and years to come is don't do this yourself. It's both above and beneath you. So Xero, and who uses Xero, just before I move on into this? Just quick show of hands. Yeah, everyone on my screen that I can see. Yeah, fair chunky, cool. So you guys are smart. Using Xero is great, and like highly advised that you do it. But one of the challenges you'll have, one of the kind of Xero is a gift and a curse. So a gift in that it's easy, like it's quite easy, costs £25 a month, like it's a no-brainer, easy to download, easy to use. A curse in that it's easy to use. So entrepreneurs think that they can actually do it themselves. So they think, oh, this is easy. This is accounting stuff. Like I can be an accountant. What we're paying anyone else to do. But one of the key sentiments is don't do this yourself because it's above and beneath you. So it's above you, and that you may think you can do accounting. Some of the accounting is very simple. However, if you don't understand how a balance sheet works, if you don't understand prepayments, accruals, journals, then you're going to this is going to outgrow you very quickly. If you don't know how to deal with a completion statement, so you buy a property, how do you capitalize the asset? How do you create the liability? How do you accrue the monthly loan interest on your balance sheet? Then you're out of your depth. So it's above you. Don't do it yourself because you're not qualified and you will create a mess. And secondly, it's beneath you because you could pay someone £15-20 an hour to do all this work for you. And I'd like to think that as investors, we're all driving for passive income. We're trying to do these big deals, that we try to value our hourly rate at higher than £20-25 an hour. So it's beneath you as well. So there's no benefit for you doing this yourself. You need to outsource this. You need to get somebody else to actually manage this for you. But some people try this and all they do is they get frustrated and find their back doing it themselves. So how do you do it? So you need 4 professionals in your business to actually run your finances for you. We've worked with companies that literally make £500,000 a month to companies that make £1,000 a month, like £1,000 to £500,000 a month of net profit. Like that's the range of what we work with, and the model is just the same at every level. I'm going to take you through it now. So 4 professionals you need. So the first lowest level is your finance assistant, and the key is here is like everyone thinks that accountants are the same. They're not. There's a big range of accountants. It's like you wouldn't necessarily go and speak to a litigation solicitor if you want a conveyancing job done, would you? But people would just think, oh, like an accountant's an accountant, I'm just going to get them to do all my stuff for me. But there are specialisms in this world you need to be aware of. So the bottom of the pyramid is your finance assistant. So your finance assistant, they're responsible for what you call operational finance. They are the ones that maybe chase your tenants when they don't pay their rent. They are the ones that maybe pay your contractors to go and fix a light bulb or whatever it is for you. They're the ones that basically are making payments in the bank. And they are like responsible for operational finance. So it's all about actually delivering on the important and urgent tasks that come up day to day. Now, these people do not have to be qualified. They don't need any accountancy qualification. They can be just somebody that's good at detail. So if you've done wealth dynamics, someone that's a steel, they could be a virtual assistant. They could be a personal assistant. They could be $5 an hour up to £15 an hour, whatever it is you want to do. But generally, they don't have to be a qualified professional. They just need to have a bit of an understanding of Xero. Next is a bookkeeper. So a bookkeeper is responsible for what we call recs and checks. So recs and checks. A rec being like a reconciliation. And what that means is what we see in the bank. So for those of you that have got Xero, what you'll see is every day we have these things called bank feeds. They come through and it says, right, yesterday you spent £12.50 at Costa Coffee. It's way too much money. It cost a bit, whatever, £12.50 at Costa Coffee. So the next day they say, well, look, they've sent £12.50 at Costa Coffee and there's the receipt because they've sent me the receipt. They're nice and organized. I'm going to put that to accommodation and food. So I'm going to put that into accommodation and food, or I'm going to put it to entertainment, whatever it may be. Now, very simple. And you'd say, well, why do I need a bookkeeper for that? I could do that myself. Well, you could. But what we also need to do is they need to do what we call recs and checks. So they also need to check things as well. Something that I always see that's wrong. Like whenever I go into anyone's Xero accounts, like 9 times out of 10, this will be wrong. There's 2 things. One of them is deposits from tenants. So if you have a custodial scheme where you actually transfer the money to the DPS, on your balance sheet, it should say 0. You should have no liability to tenants because that should go to the custodial scheme, and the liability would be with the custodial scheme. Another one we always see wrong is investor interest. So if you're taking loan interest, so if you're taking loans from private investors and you're not paying the loan back till the end of the term, maybe 2 years later, now just because you're not paying back at the end of the term doesn't mean you don't now owe that money. And every month you may increase your expenses and increase that liability by £1,000. So for example, every month they'll be making sure your balance sheet matches the loan schedule, as an example. So these are more complicated things that they need. Bookkeeper should generally be AAT qualified, which is an accounting technician qualification in the UK, or they should have qualification by experience. That's generally what you need with a bookkeeper. Now, some of you, once you get to a place, or some of you may already have a bookkeeper, but what can happen is it's like the bookkeeper's then producing stuff for you. You're looking at it, there's loads of mistakes in it, doesn't really make sense. You're not really getting the value. And you're like, what am I paying this person for? Like, I might as well do it myself or get my finance assistant to do it because it's not working. The missing link is this person, which is what we call a finance manager. So if you as an entrepreneur are overseeing a bookkeeper, you're going to be quite disappointed because it's like the blind leading the blind. People think a bookkeeper knows how to do all the finance function, but they don't. They've only got an AAT qualification. They're not super qualified. So they'll probably ask you, well, what should I do with this? What should I do with that? And you don't know. You're not a chartered accountant, which is why we need a chartered accountant to oversee the bookkeeper, to give you the leverage you need and allow you to sit in the kind of decide and direct position as opposed to being too heavily involved in the actual numbers. So a finance manager, they generally are responsible for what we call turning data to information. So they basically take what the bookkeeper's done and put it into reports with commentary for you so you can fully understand what's going on. So rather than you go through every single line, they can say, right, Heathland Terrace, our rent was lower than expected because we've got a void in room 6. Our gas electric was up by £100 because it's become winter. And our maintenance bill was actually down by £50. But next month, you can expect a higher maintenance bill of £500 because you've approved this expenditure on a new tap for the property. That's information. Data would be bank statements and numbers. Information is, this is what's happened and this is what you need to know. This is what you need to do about it. This is a chartered accountant. Generally, you pay anywhere from about £35 to £55 per hour for this person. And like this really is where the magic happens. This is the person. So you can send them a voice note on Monday and you'll get an answer by Tuesday of like, what happens if all the interest rates go up by 2%? This deal slipped. What happens if I have to stay on this bridge for an extra 3 months to my profitability and my cash? When it comes on tax. So it's your tax accountant. What happens most of the time is people start here. It's like, oh, I'm going to buy a property. And it's like, first thing I want to do is make sure I don't pay too much tax. It's like, in reality, most of you buying properties, you're not going to pay tax for a long time because you're going to buy it, you're going to refurb it. Some of that refurb expenditure needs to go into your P&L. So you're going to have minimal corporation tax. People don't tend to draw money for a good amount of time. You may have loaned the money into the company. So actually you've got a director's loan account that you can draw money out of. So actually for the first 3 or 4 years, particularly my property journey, like I didn't pay any tax. And to be fair, I still don't have to pay very much at the moment because I've still got, a loss that I kind of carry forward every year based on the refurb, some of the refurb expenditure that you can legitimately put through the P&L. But this person is like very important once you get to a certain level. But in order to make the most of your tax accountant, one of the key sentiments is they're for tax strategy only. It doesn't end well when you speak to a tax accountant and they do your bookkeeping for you and they try to do your payments for you, etc. They just get overwhelmed, overworked. And as I said at the start, they are stretched and they don't deliver very well. But where it does work well is where they're at the top of the triangle. They are doing a small amount of work, but it's high value. So once a year you sit down, you have a tax strategy session. You're buying a property which you know might have some strange VAT relief on it. So you contact them and say, like, can you advise me on this purchase, please? You're selling a property. It's like, how do I sell this? Should I sell the shares of the company or the property itself? Like, those are the questions you want to ask. And really, this person really is responsible for tax strategy and compliance. So submitting your accounts and giving you the guidance as and when you need it. Cost for them tends to be anywhere from £100 to £200 a month in general for a retainer. The higher end of that spectrum tends to be for the more complicated companies. The lower end tends to be for the more simplistic businesses. So these are the 4 professionals, and this is what you need to structure your business. And I'm going to take you through this in a moment. This doesn't have to be expensive at all. As I said, we've got companies that are paying, making £1,000 a month and £500,000 a month. And this is the structure and the setup, and the cost can scale up or down depending on the size of the actual business. Few key points: overpaid versus underpaid. So if you are finding that you have somebody in place, like you go and find an accountant, you put them in place, you pay them £35 an hour, and it's like, they should be doing a great job. They start out well, and all of a sudden they become quite sloppy, they become late, you're spotting mistakes. It might be because you've recruited an accountant that's a finance manager that's really good. But if you, like us, we're entrepreneurs, we're really good at what we do normally. But if you give us loads of low value work, what happens? The quality slips, we're overwhelmed, we can never deliver on stuff. So it might be because you're overpaying the wrong professional to do low value work, or it because you're underpaying a bookkeeper or a finance assistant. So I have people all the time that go and try and recruit a virtual assistant from the Philippines to do this stuff. And they just get frustrated. They're like, she says she got 0 experience in books, but she never can deliver on this report for me, or he never does this, he never does that, and I never get any value. But it's because you're trying to get somebody, pay them $5, $6, $7, $8, $9, $10 an hour to do work that generally a qualified professional should be doing at 35, 40, 55 pounds an hour. The result is probably what you'd expect. Urgent versus important. I'd say, like, as you go up the scale, work should be less urgent and it should be more important. So your finance assistant work will be urgent stuff, like paying contractors. If you ever missed a payment to a contractor, before the weekend, expect to get a brick through the window. Like, it's urgent, it needs to be done, like, quickly. But as you work your way up, your finance manager's role should be important. It should be like things that are really high value. And if you try to get a finance assistant or a bookkeeper to do too much important work when you're piling on urgent stuff, we're completing on this property, chase this person's rent, then all that's going to happen is the importance is going to slip. Internal versus external, I'd always recommend the bookkeeper and finance manager and tax accountant. The top 3 are external to the business, because if you have them in-house, they get caught up in the noise and generally they don't perform quite as well. And then generally everybody in this triangle can be on pay per hour. Tax accountants tend to like retainer-based models, but the bottom 3 can be pay per hour. So I'd always recommend that because it scales with the workload required within the business. This is how you set up a finance function, and these are the 4 people you need. That's the 4 professionals, and as I said, this works at any level, and I'd recommend getting this in place sooner rather than later. Good example of this is Sen. So this is on the Ultimate FD podcast, episode 23. So Sen, if you listen to the episode, he's basically, him and his partner, Chris, I've got this high lucrative multi-million-pound service accommodation business. He was trying to run this whole thing on a 52 tab spreadsheet. He tried to work with numerous accountants. He recruited numerous bookkeepers and can never make it work. And it's because he needed this. He needed the 4 professionals, because he was trying to get one person to do way too much, things that were underqualified for, overqualified for, urgent and important. As soon as you structure it like this, it all came together for him. So I'd recommend listening to that story on the Ultimate FD podcast. Snake oil salesman number 2. So the second snake oil salesman is your bank balance. Now, key sentiment is your bank balance is lying to you. And far too many entrepreneurs are basically making key decisions based on what they've got in their online banking at this point in time. Your bank balance changes every minute, every second. It is not an indicator of how you're doing as a company, and it shouldn't dictate any decisions that you are making at this time. So it changes every minute. I could log in now and have £100,000 in the bank. I could log in a minute later and have £2,000 in the bank. Totally changes, dramatically changes. So we don't want to use this for decision making. When you base a good decision on data, the outcome will never be good. Like, it's always a bad decision if it's based on data. Your bank balance and the amount of money in your account is not a holistic view of what's going on. It's a moment in time, and it doesn't give you an indication. It's not how you make a good decision. And what we want to do is move from bank balance to balance sheet. So we need a set of reports that we're actually going to review each month to give you the information you need to ensure your properties are always performing at the right level. Like a stool needs 3 legs, your property portfolio needs 3 reports. And these are what we call the 3 pillars. So the first is a profit and loss. So just a quick show of hands, who's got P&Ls that they look at every month by property? Donald has, Mark has, a few people. So for the people that don't, like, I'd say it's just the fundamentals is getting a P&L in place. So, you know, just so we can be clear what it is. A P&L is past performance. So P&L stands for profit and loss. What it does is it looks at last month and it says, right, what was my income? So what was my rent roll? What were my costs? And what profit do I have at the end of that? Simple. But what it does is it basically says what happened. And by knowing what happened, we can influence future results. So everybody is an absolute minimum needs to see by every single property, every single month, what is the P&L for that property and what do they need to change? This is even more important if you have an agent managing your properties for you, because the volatility can be a bit all over the place and you need, you know, to really sense checking that. My finance manager, before I've even seen the P&L, she's like, she's challenged all their maintenance. She said, why have we got arrears in this room? You know, you said you're going to pay us this month. Just like, that's what she does. She uses the P&L to do that. So you need P&L by property. And it's like, right, oh, the electricity's, you know, the gas has been up for higher than budget for 3 months in this property. You know, maybe we should install a timer stat. Cool. We've had an arrears case that's gone on now for 2 months. We need to contact the agent and do something about it. I've literally spoken to people that have had like literally like 10, 15,000 pounds of arrears built up because they don't have this in place, because they didn't even notice, because the portfolio is so big, didn't have a P&L they're reviewing accurately. I've had people where their utility bills have shot up because the tenants have been like swindling the prepayment meters. And it's like, they didn't even notice for about 12 months. By that point, it was about £7,000 or £8,000 that the tenants had basically stolen from them as an entrepreneur. You may think, oh, that would never happen to me. Of course I would notice that. But you can get to a point where you've got 10, 15, 20, 100 properties. And it's like, this is how you see that detail and you don't miss these things. It's how you basically stop the leaky bucket and make sure you're getting paid. The second report is what we call a balance sheet. Balance sheet, you know, people get worried about this, but it's quite simple. It's basically your present value. So it's your assets, which would be the properties you own, less your liabilities, which is your loans, for example, private investments, mortgages. And if you take those two numbers away from each other, you get what's called your net asset value. So basically, if you sold all your properties today and paid off all your mortgages, what would you actually be worth? So that's a really important number to look at, because it's actually an indicator of how wealthy you actually are. And, you know, as investors in property, I'd like to think we're trying to improve that number. So, you know, why would you not look at it? But also what the balance sheet helps us do is manage our liabilities. So as property investors, we tend to have large private loans, we have mortgages, we have, you know, interest payments. And by keeping the balance sheet accurate, we can actually, you know, see the wood from the trees and see how much money we actually owe to investors. When do we have to pay this money back? What are the interest rates on all those loans? Should I when I sell this property, should I invest it or should I pay back a 12%, you know, interest? Really helps you manage your finances. Just a point on balance sheet as well. Like if you talk about moving from bank balance to balance sheet, if you think about what a balance sheet is, assets are any essentially future inflows, liabilities are any future outflows, and it also bank balances on there. So balance sheet is a really great snapshot because it shows you what the situation is now, but indicates what's going to happen moving forward. So it really means that you can kind of move away from that standalone bank balance and go from data information, which would be a balance sheet. Cash flow, as I alluded to at the start, cash flow for property investors is notoriously challenging. We have large inflows, large outflows. Our outflows tend to always be higher than anticipated in the form of refurb budgets. And our inflows always tend to be lower and longer than anticipated in the form of property refinances. I don't know if anyone can level with me there. It's very rare you get a refinance that's higher and it's normally the other way around. And we need to make sure with cash flow, we're looking at the next 12 months, particularly for you guys. And we're going, right, well, what happens if that refinance takes a month later than expected? What happens if we actually don't get the valuation we expected? And we're looking at any future before they become emergencies, and we're planning for them to make sure we've got the cash available to actually make all these things happen. And we always say, like, running out of cash is not a problem. Running out of cash and not knowing about it is a huge problem. So if you know in 6 months' time you're gonna have to pay an investor back and you've got a 30k black hole, think about that 30k now. Bespoke reports. So you might want bespoke reports, but before I tell you what a couple of those bespoke reports are, I would say if you've not got the first 3 done, get those 3 sorted, make sure they're highly valuable, highly usable every single month, and then move on to your bespoke reports. So 2 bespoke reports I'd highly recommend. One of them is a debt schedule. So making sure you've got all your debts listed out, all of your repayment dates listed out, all of your interest rates listed out, particularly for those of you on large that are borrowing money, etc., and doing all these kind of big deals. We've literally just started working with a client that basically they got to a place where they're doing at least one HMO a month, loads of private finance, loads of mortgages, loads of bridging, and it's like it just got to a place where they couldn't manage it anymore. So literally, we're creating this debt schedule for them that will keep them updated and managed moving forward. Really valuable tool. Second, and I'd highly recommend this, and this could be one of the most lucrative schedules you ever put in place, is a portfolio review schedule. I'll show you what that looks like. Basically, it looks like this. So I'd really recommend having every asset on a schedule like this. Feel free to take a screenshot and basically check in on this every single month. And it's very simple. Like, this is obviously just some 10 properties on here, but you've got some properties, you've got mortgage values, you've got interest rates, you've got the rent, the cost, the interest, and the profit. And real key point, these shouldn't be what were in your deal appraisal, what property filter told you they were going to be. These the actual averages based on actual performance. We need to really make sure that we're looking at actuals here. Then we've got the gross yields based on what we think we would be able to sell them at. And then what's really useful is you kind of come over here, and this return on equity figure is like a pretty powerful figure. So you really need to be looking at this, because over time you might find that you achieve, you've got a large amount of equity actually sitting in the property. So where's equity? So you got a large amount of equity actually sitting in the property, which would be the difference between the expected sale price and the outstanding mortgage. But you're not making as much money as you'd like from that equity. So if you look here, the return on equity on this one is 3.87%. And based on this, if I was to sell that property today, I'd make 26 years of profit now. So, what's a better move? To hold it for 26 years, hoping I'm going to achieve this profit, by which time there's probably going to be a bathroom that needs changing, a kitchen that needs changing, or sell it now and just take the money. And if my return is 3.87%, then why would I keep the equity in that property? Take it out. If I've got a balance sheet which has got loans on it at 12.5%, 13%, take it out, pay off that loan, sell it, take off that loan. Or think, well, if I had that money now, could I reinvest it? Yes. And I literally have used this portfolio review sheet to restructure my entire portfolio. I've got the least amount of properties I've ever had, because I sold off all the poorly performing assets which had a low return on equity. And I've pumped that into paying off debt, restructuring some of the current portfolio, and I'm making more money than I've ever made. So it's less properties and more profit, which is kind of what this is all about. So it's really staying on track of that entire portfolio. And I appreciate for some of you now, the idea of ever selling a property is like, why would you ever sell a property? I'm like investing so much into finding these, but there will come a point where the market's shifted, the market's changed. You're like, actually, why keep it? Because it doesn't make any sense. So this will happen eventually. So you want to be on this from the start. But the key is, it's not about gut. It's not about, oh, I bought that property and it was really hard for me to buy, and it was a really good deal, and I really like the owner. Like, no, it's just hard and fast numbers. That's how we're going to make sure these properties are paying you forever. It's just an example. This one is basically one of the deals that we've done. By using this sheet, by tracking it, we knew we were making about £195 per month loss, and it should have been a great deal, but interest rates went up, the market changed. And by literally using that portfolio review sheet, we almost sold it, but at the same time, we were looking for leases on it, that from £195 loss to £1,000 a month profit. And it's by constantly looking at these things, looking at the P&Ls, thinking about how we can change, keeping ahead with the market, you can make some significant changes. This has gone from this like really thorn in our side property, which should have been doing really well but never worked, to an amazing property. But it's all about just having the clarity on numbers. Just getting. What I've got is I've got lots of questions coming in. I'll if it's okay, I'll do them at the end. Highly recommend this podcast episode. This is Jason Abbott, like very, very successful guy, huge in commercial property within Liverpool, large portfolio, property management, essentially business to run his portfolio for him. Episode 60. And he was in this place where, once again, he just didn't have the clarity on his portfolio, didn't have the clarity in the P&Ls, the balance sheets, the cash, totally restructured for him. And it's like now he's going through probably a really difficult business restructure, but it's been his guiding light and it's been just massive for him. So I highly recommend tuning into this episode to kind of learn more about the power this stuff can have. The third and final snake oil salesman is you. I'm disappointed to tell you, but you are a bit of a problem within your business. We all are a bit of a problem within our businesses, within our property portfolios. Why? We get excited on a New Year's Day. We say, right, this year I'm going to buy 3 properties. This year I'm going to buy 2 HMOs. And we set these goals, which is cool. But a goal without a plan is just a wish. And you, unfortunately, we're entrepreneurs. We love the roller coaster. Like, we pretend to hate it, but we love the ups. We love the downs. Yes, we got the deal. It's the best day ever. Oh, no, we lost the deal. It's the worst day ever. We enjoy that entrepreneurial journey. And it's fun. It's what kind of gets us out of bed. You want to do deals. Like, everyone here wants to do deals. We're signed up to Property Filter. We're on Mastermind. We're doing all this stuff. Like, we want to do deals. Like, there's nothing more exciting than actually doing deals. But maybe you want to do them at the expense of actually the returns that you want to make. And some of these deals, if we're not careful, they may not stack how we want them to stack. And typically, and this is not for everybody, but some of you don't like detail. So you're not really going to like properly vet these deals before you get involved in them. So you're going to do too many deals too quickly. So what we need to do is we need to plan, and we need to make sure we know what deals we're going to do in advance, so we don't get distracted by shiny pennies, and so actually go the distance. So don't work hard or smart, work both. We're going to be working hard. We're going to be using Property Filter. We're going to be finding these deals, but we need to be working really smart as well and making sure we're only doing deals that we actually want to do. The way we do this is what we call like a future forecast. If you don't have a 12-month forecast for your business, like, you are going to always, you're going to get distracted. You're going to do shiny pennies. The year's never going to work out how you hoped it was going to work out, and you're not going to have the best year. We need a 12-month forecast, and we need to decide in advance what rules and returns are. So what deals are you going to do? What deals are you not going to do? How much are you going to buy a property for? How much are you going to refurbish it for? How much money is it going to make you? What does the ROI need to be? Decide all of that stuff up front, not just get distracted and get pulled left, right, and center each and every month. Once you know what you're going to do, you need to decide when you are going to do it. Now, I know it's hard to predict when you're going to do deals, but you need to have an idea. You need to say, right, I'm going to do 1 deal in Q1, 1 deal in Q2, 1 deal in Q3, and 2 deals in Q4, once I've built my marketing campaign. And you need to factor in deals are actually going to pan out across the year. And once you do this, you can predict to the penny your profit. You can literally say, well, I know what deals I'm going to do. I know what my investment criteria is going to be. I know when I'm going to do it. And then you can actually predict what your profitability is going to look like for the entire year, literally to the penny. And you drawings. So as an investor, as an entrepreneur, we want to make sure we know what our drawings are actually going to look like for the entire year. We know how the year is going to pan out. And this is how we have our best year on record every single year, is we have a forecast and we stick to it. And we let that forecast dictate how we're going to push things. This is an example of almost forecast. This is what it looks like. This is an ultimate FD produced forecast, where we basically decide what we're going to do by when. We know exactly what all of our inflows are going to be, our outflows are going to be, and what the end of the year is actually going to look like. The key is here, what we're trying to do is go from out-of-date data to real-time information. That's what we're trying to do. Because if you are just reviewing P&Ls and reviewing like, oh, this is my income, this is my expenditure, that there's some value in that. But we want to turn that into information, which is saying, well, this year, this month, your rent roll was £95,000, whereas across the portfolio, it should have been £97,500. So why are we down by £2,500? So what we're doing is we're basically saying that in month 6, our rent roll should have been £105,000. It was actually £96,000. Why are we down by £9,000? So it starts to actually help you ask questions, and it holds you accountable. Because what it does is say, well, you said you're going to have 2 properties by this point. Why have you not got those 2 properties by this point? And rather than it just rolling over, it's going to kick you into action to actually make that happen. Ben and Jack, really good example of this. Huge. Literally, they've done £40 million worth of deals, and they basically restructure their entire businesses, with every single business having a future forecast, which basically maps out how they're going to do it. And they've had one of their best years ever because they've actually decided up front. Right, that's episode 64, so have a listen. Those are the 3 snake oil salesmen. And I'm going to give you a bonus one now before we finish, because I've shared with you all the things you need. And the bonus snake oil salesman, the final person that you need to be really careful of, is the finance director. Now, pretty sure I'm sitting here as the finance director. Somebody else on the call said they're a finance director. But what I'm going to share with you now is what you need instead of a finance director. So you need these 6 things: systems and software. You need Xero. You need seats. You need maybe you need a property management system. You need the 4 professionals that we talked about, the 4 people: right role, right job, right price. You need the 3 pillars. You need the 3 reports every single month for you to review. You need a bulletproof business model. What deals are you going to do? What's going to hit your criteria and what's not going to hit your criteria? You need a forecast, 12-month forecast for the year about what deals you're going to do, by when, what are your overheads going to be, which investors you're going to pay back when. And you need master cash manager, which is basically your cash flow forecast, spot problems before they become emergencies. Now, I created Ultimate FD because I thought everyone needed a finance director. What I've actually found that if you give entrepreneurs these tools, these 6 tools, and they have them in place, there's less requirement for an FD. Some people want it, there's less requirement from an FD. And particularly for those of you that have got 3, 5, 6, 10 properties, a lot of this, once it's in place, this is all you need to run your business highly profitably. Make sure you have every single year, have a team of world-class people working for you all day, every day, that makes you managing your portfolio to make sure you're extracting every pound of profit you can out of it. And this is how you basically make sure you're profitable forever. This is, rather than selling expensive fish, this is giving you the fishing rod to manage all your financials yourself. I'm going to open for questions in just one moment. I think just to finish up, if anyone wants to get like a personalized report on their business about like how they're set up now, you can have this totally free of charge. We have the Ultimate FC acid test. If you scan this QR code, basically what this will do is take you into a survey, questionnaires, and then we'll provide a bespoke report for you at the end. So if anyone wants to make most of that, get your phone out, scan the QR code, take the Ultimate FT acid test. I'll put it on the screen at the moment. And basically what we're doing is we have what we call Ultimate FT reviews. And I've basically agreed with Guillaume. Like normally these reviews are, so what happened there? Basically 30 minutes with me personally. We charge £697 per review and they're unlimited. You know, people are willing to pay that money, like we do it. What we're doing is, because you guys are Property Filter, we're going to give you guys an offer, which is basically for the first 3 people that take the acid test, which I'll share the QR code in a moment, you will get a free Ultimate FT review where we'll literally sit down, talk through any of the challenges you've got at the moment, talk through your company financials, share Xero, NDA signed in advance, and I'll give you all the support I can to make sure you have your best financial year on record, and talk through any of the challenges that you may be facing at the moment. Because of the connectivity issues as well, because it's been a bit of we started late, I'll put that to 5. So I'll offer the first 5 people that take the acid test a Ultimate FT review, and basically give you one-to-one time with me. And if you don't already listen to the Ultimate FT podcast, we have some fans. Feel free to go and check this out. It's Ultimate FT podcast, available on all major platforms, and I'm try and share as much value in there throughout as I can. Let's do some Q&A. So I'll leave this on the screen in case anybody needs it. Just find.
Thanks so much, Josh. I literally just picked it up on my phone, went on my WhatsApp, and shared the link for people who are on their PC as well, so we can just click on it. So I did this a few years ago, and it started a bit of a service, and you helped us out. So yeah, I really recommend. That was quite eye-opening for us. So I think it's something.
Thank you.
The early, if I'd known about it a year earlier, I would not have created
done a bit earlier.
Yeah, I think
that's the key thing. It's like go take the test. All you're gonna do is get a personalized report, and if you then want to reach out after, feel free. But it's like it's gonna help put you in the right direction. I've got a few questions. So I'm right to read them out in the chat box, Guillaume. Just
if you want, I can man the chat. Is it Ash, the first one you were looking at?
Yeah. Is that okay? Do you mind doing that?
Yeah. So Ash is asking about balance sheets. How will the accountant work out the present value of an asset? I'm assuming this is talking about property.
Yeah. Just don't want to get too technical, really. There's basically 2 ways. Well, yeah. I was just Ash, if you're there, can you just provide a bit of context, like what? Because accountancy answer, which is probably not going to really add any value to you, because I'll tell you how an accountant would work it out, and you can go, okay, well, that adds no value to me as an entrepreneur. Once again, it's going back to that accountant language versus entrepreneur language. What do you want to know? Like, if you can just provide a bit of context, is like, you want the value. Why? Like, what's the context for the question, so I can give you a better answer, if that's okay.
Yeah. So if we don't have Ash, so I'm guessing this could be like in the context of your balance sheet when you're doing your statutory accounts, or just to make sure you've got the right asset value for your properties.
Yes. Well, okay. I'll give the answer. So basically, there's two ways you can actually state your properties on the balance sheet. So one is basically at cost, so cost plus refurb. So if you spent 100 grand on the property, you spent 50 grand refurbing it, it would just stay on your balance sheet at 150,000 pounds. So it's cost plus refurb. Or you can do it at kind of, which is basically every year they'll ask you for some information and say, like, has this gone up in value? And you basically say yes or no. Like, yeah, I think it has. I think it was 150. Now I think it's 175. And they'll basically restate it for you and basically put the increase in value in what we call a revaluation reserve. Now, basically that's on your tax accountant to advise the way that they want to manage your accounts. I think kind of key sentiment, and I know some chartered tax advisors on the call, I believe, is it can't change. So if you choose one, they choose one. But one of the things I'd say is there's no major like benefit of doing that. Like, I would have your balance sheet, which is going to state your asset value, but I think the balance sheet is probably more prevalent for the actual the liabilities. Then I do have a separate on my portfolio review sheet. That's kind of where I'll manage what I know if I went to actually sell the property, based on the gross yield. That's where I'll have the actual value stated.
It's interesting you use the yield to get a good idea of your portfolio management. I didn't
for a HMO. Mine are HMOs on leases, and the reason I use the yield is because the person who sold 4 or 5 of my properties just says, yeah, this one would get this one would get that. Yeah. So that's how he values it. So that's the way I've done it. You can do it however you like.
Okay, awesome. Someone's asking, can we have a copy of the template? I believe this was the portfolio review template.
Yes, you can. If your assistant reaches out to me, I will I'll sort that.
Yeah, I'll share it in the Property Filter Facebook group together with the recording, okay?
Yeah.
Awesome. Josh, do you recommend a property investor or landlord, landlady to ask their finance manager to prepare budgets and forecasts?
Say again, sorry.
Do you recommend a property investor or landlady, landlord, to ask their finance manager to prepare budgets and forecasts for them?
Yeah, 100%. So your finance manager is probably the person that's going to be best placed to do that. I've just literally sent mine a voice note on yesterday, basically saying I want to kick all the new budgets, the forecasts off for 2024, like ASAP. I basically want to finalize in December. So she's at the moment rolling everything over, getting everything set up. I think the only thing I'd say is, like, one of the weaknesses I'd say with a chartered accountant or a finance manager is sometimes they can overcomplicate things. And one of the biggest challenges you're going to have is just them being able to speak entrepreneur language. So the most important thing is whoever's doing it for you, they need to know how to keep it simple to a level you can understand it. And I always think entrepreneurs need to be able to play. So you need to be able to play with the numbers, play with the forecast. Go, oh yeah, once if I change that cost, once if I do a deal here or whatever and move it around, it's really important. So when you give them the brief, it's like, don't just roll it over and send me a load of spreadsheets. It's like, I want a model that I can play around with and be able to actually play with myself. Because otherwise you'll see a sheet, it'll be like 20 tab spreadsheet. And you're like, I've got no, I'm switched off.
Yeah, definitely. And it's the key sentiment you shared earlier, like, don't do it yourself. So we're guilty of this. We did probably ourselves for a while. And then you can do this for so long until you realize you're wasting your time and energy. So
absolutely.
Awesome. And there's a bit of an unrelated question, which is not really FD related or finance related, but given the fact that you and I are speaking with lots of investors, what are the biggest property investors doing now? Buying, selling, or holding? If you want to share some sentiment, and I can do the same after.
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I'm privileged enough to see behind the scenes in so many zero accounts. And I think if you ask me that question about 18 months ago, I'd have said probably selling.
Yeah.
I think now it's buying and holding. I think particularly I think a lot of the people we work with tend to own and operate HMOs or service accommodation, and at the moment it just seems both of those areas just seem to be booming. So people are generally buying and holding and just milking it. Whereas 18 months ago people were selling. That's my sentiment and what I'm tend to be seeing behind the scenes. And what I'd say is that we do a lot of forecasting for landlords, and generally it's very rare that we're like forecasting sales. It's all about acquisitions and putting up rents and milking the cow for what they've already got. I think what is really interesting is a lot of people now tend to be also there does tend to also be a bit of a restructure to move from like professional HMOs to leases, or to move over to leases. But before, when people would like be selling assets, they're now leasing or finding other alternative solutions for them. So yeah,
could you explain a bit for people who aren't familiar with this when you say leasing? So who is the tenant?
Yeah, so on mine, for example, my whole portfolio now, apart from 2 properties, is either leased on a rent-to-rent basis to a letting agent. So they basically rent it from me, or they're leased to charitable providers, to people that maybe have issues kind of being part of the community. They need care, they need extra care. It's those kind of people. And I've got 2 leases with the NHS as well for landing rooms. So where they lease the building, then I think normally nurses from India come over for 2 months, and then if they pass, they stay. If they fail, they have another month. So they kind of need this turnout. So I guess it's just big corporate body style providers.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Josh. There is one question. The link doesn't seem to work to book in a Calendly, so it's not a Calendly link to book a meeting. It's basically a scorecard, a bit of a test. So you ask some questions, and it will give you a personalized report, like a personality test. And then from there, you'll see like the areas where you're excelling and the areas where you're with some advice in the area. So we did this a few times now, and it's been quite helpful. So what we'll do is we'll
post the link back in the chat box as well, Guillaume, that you popped in.
Yeah, hopefully I still have it copied in my thing. Yeah, okay, awesome, perfect. So what we'll do is we'll share this link with the recording as well, so you can have a look. Yeah, it's quite valuable. So sorry again for the glitch today. So thanks so much for being here, for your time today. Thank you for joining today's Deal Finder Corner. Thanks a lot, Josh, for joining and sharing these amazing insights. I think it's lots of things that people want to know, want to think about, want to plan for, and it's been a game changer for us. So I recommend everybody to look into this in their own time and take the acid test, which is full of insight. So in the meantime, please visit propertyfilter.co.uk, log on to your Property Filter account, check out the deal blueprint where you can define your goldmine area, engage with motivated sellers, assess properties in seconds, load your pipeline and make deals, have an endless supply of deals, join the top 1% and become a high achiever deal finder. I hope you enjoyed today's Deal Finder Corner. Looking forward to seeing you next week. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you all.
See you next week.